Our last talk is by a local boy made good. Tristan Harris grew up in Santa Rosa, went to Stanford, got a degree in computer science, and is the co-founder and CEO of a hot tech startup called Apture. He's also a very curious person, and that's going to be the focus of his talk for us tonight. Thanks.
Hi. I've always been really passionate about curiosity. I think that in some ways we're all here because we're all kind of curious people, right? And my company that I started called Apture is about fueling curiosity. And so I thought I'd ask the question, how do we inspire more curiosity? And it started earlier this year or last year. I watched this talk by Jesse Schell, who's a professor at CMU. And Jesse has this talk he gives on the curiosity gap, which is the idea that there's going to be an increasing divide between the curious people and the non-curious people that's unique to our time. And the reason is, it used to be that if you were like really curious about something and you want to know how to build a radio, right? You had to like go to the library and you had to buy a bunch of books, and then, oh, they don't have those books at the library, so you have to ship them over, and then once you finally have the radio kit and you run into some problem, you can't just like Google for the answer, right? So like, it used to be really hard to be curious. Now today, if you're curious, you have an insane advantage over everybody else, because you can learn anything insanely fast. Insanely fast. You want to know how to build a radio? Boom, here's 100,000 articles up from Google. Boom, here's a video of some guy who did it. He's going to lead you through every step of the way. Oh, you encounter a problem, here's an answer. So if you are curious, you have an insane advantage. And what that means is that potentially the non-curious people get left behind. Which means that there's this question. Now, I also want to stress, I mean, there's the non-curious in terms of, you know, kids, and there's also adults. Like, curiosity wanes over time. How can you improve and inspire curiosity? So, needless to say, curiosity is naturally exists in some people and less naturally exists in other people, right? So there's some people have more curiosity, other people have less curiosity. But forgetting all that, the thing that I want to argue today is that certain environments can produce and encourage more curiosity than others. And the question is, what are the nature of those types of environments to produce more curiosity? So for example, I'll give a couple cool studies. There's this one study that showed that, it's just really subtle, but in an environment that's more stimulating, a low-income kid gets exposed to 167 words an hour, a middle-income kid gets exposed to 487 words an hour by their parents, just by being in that environment. So there's a difference of 32 million fewer words if you're in the low-income group. Similarly, it's actually shown that academically, middle-income kids and welfare income kids actually do about the same during the school year, but it's during the summers that there's this big change where low-income kids don't have stimulation, and they sit in front of the TV, or they don't have stimulation, and middle-income kids go up because they're taken to summer camps, and they read books, and their kids take them to things, their parents take them to things. So there's this idea that half of knowledge and half of what makes us curious is this exposure and awareness to different things. That the more you're exposed to museums and books, and you read, you watch movies, and you're inspired, and you travel someplace, and you realize people live in a different way than your own, the more curiosity can kind of exist in your world. And the more things that you're aware of, the more familiar remote things become. So for example, if you know English and Spanish, and you hear French, you're not interested in French, but because you know English and Spanish, you automatically start listening more to it, right? And you actually recognize words, and you start asking yourself questions about syntax and grammar because you recognize that there's patterns to language. It's not just this thing that you use every day. And so I thought I'd kind of posit this idea of a curiosity spiral, which is the more you know, the more things you pick up on in the world, the more you experience, the more things you see. And the more you see, the more affiliation and attracted you are to things you don't know about. And the more questions you have, and then the more you know, and it just sort of keeps just expanding and expanding. And so even a non-curious person, think about this, Wikipedia, if you've seen this XKCD joke, drop a non-curious person in the environment of Wikipedia, and Wikipedia just has this magical effect where it just keeps you clicking for hours and hours and hours, and it's an environment that's just so deeply connected. Now, why is Wikipedia so good? And I want to argue it's because it connects information so closely together. I studied with a professor at Stanford named BJ Fogg, who studied behavior design and behavior change. How do you change someone's behavior? So if you wanted to change people's behavior and change or increase people's behavior towards curiosity, he argues you have to motivate curiosity, you'd have to change the ability for people to express curiosity, and you have to trigger curiosity. So if you think about it, like an environment changes these last two variables, it changes your ability to do something. Think about a laundromat, right? If you're going to do your laundry, how do I change your laundromat behavior? Well, if the laundromat's 10 blocks away versus 1 block away, or you need like 500 quarters, or you can use your credit card, or it's in your apartment complex or it's not, right? Those things are variables that affect how easy it is to do your laundry. And so I actually started a company called Apture, which is kind of about this. It's about lowering the cost and making it simpler to express curiosity. So essentially what we do is you can highlight something, instead of opening up 30 tabs to your research, we just make it seamless, and the information like Wikipedia and photos and videos just appear like on the page that you're on. Because if you make information simpler and you make the environment easier and you produce a stimulating environment, people use it. And there's this idea that what if everywhere we went, everywhere every experience you had was like Wikipedia, where the environment was just naturally stimulating, right? Like imagine a world in which everything you did was just naturally stimulating. And I think if you're a really curious person, it kind of starts appearing that way because you just ask questions that other people don't ask, and you become interested in things other people aren't interested in. So Tim O'Reilly, actually, who's here, I think, gave a talk 2 years ago on language as a map, and his idea that you can't perceive things you don't have language for. So when he moved to Sebastopol, he looked at this green stuff on the ground. He only had one word in his brain for it, and it was grass. So grass is the only thing I know to describe to this thing that I see. And then as he had more experience in Sebastopol and he had horses, he started seeing alfalfa grass and oat grass and orchard grass. And he posited that like language is this map that helps you see more deeply. So if language is a map, I like to think of curiosity as like cartography, the ability to see finer and finer grained maps in the world for more things. And you just see deeper and deeper patterns that other people don't see. And I think that it's just back to this idea that the more that you know, the more patterns you see in the world, the more things you want to know, and this loop just kind of keeps going. And I love food camps, I love Ignite Talks because I think it's all about engaging curiosity and like having a little bite-sized bit of new information or sort of a step forward in something you've never heard of before. And regardless of whether or not you were naturally endowed with curiosity and you have kids that are more curious than other kids, or you have been curious but then it's kind of waned over time, like I think all of us should be thinking about how can we create really stimulating environments or products or services which augment the ability to create a stimulating environment and create more curiosity in the world. So thank you very much.